What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today with the Skyy Moore Tale of the Tape. You guys wanted me to do one more of these. I said Jahan Dotson would be my last one, but you guys demanded in the comment section that I do Skyy Moore. If you guys really want me to do another one after this, you're going to have to beg me for it in the comments down below. In today's video, we're going to be telling the story of Skyy Moore from start to finish, as always, to best inform you on how to handle him come your Dynasty rookie drafts this coming May. If this is your first episode tuning into A Tale of the Tape, check out the entire playlist. We have it on our channel. If you search us on YouTube, you can see a playlist of Tale of the Tapes there. Breece Hall, Malik Willis, Drake London, etc. All available for you on YouTube, as well as our player cards and their grades over on Patreon. If you guys want to join us over there, link is in the description for that. If you guys enjoy this video at any point, please hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds and it really helps us out. We really appreciate it. Comment any of your thoughts down below. It doesn't even have to be related to Skyy Moore. If you just have a Dynasty question in general, leave it down in the comment section below and I will get to it. And of course, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. We are closing in on 10,000 subscribers. We are trying to get there by the NFL draft if possible. Now let's hit the intro. All right, Skyy Moore. This is his tale of the tape. Wide receiver from the Western Michigan Broncos, age 21.5 years old, 5'9.5", 5'10", 195 pounds. Basic information, high school measurables, brief overview of his production. He was a 3-star cornerback, not a wide receiver, coming out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the 2019 class, number 216 ranked corner in that class. So we got a dude that didn't even, get scouted out of high school to play the position. He's currently going to go in the top 50 of the NFL draft to play. As you guys can see his production on the screen there, he came out banging as a true freshman, playing wide receiver as a high school quarterback on offense, cornerback on defense. 13 games, 51 receptions on 80 targets, 802 receiving yards, 20% or so target share. Pretty solid for a freshman wide receiver who's his first actual season playing the position. Now, of course, in 2020, we know it was a COVID-shortened season for a lot of conferences across college football, and Western Michigan's conference, I don't even know what conference they play in. Their conference was shortened a lot of canceled games, only 6 games total for the team, 5 games for Skyy Moore. So technically this was his breakout season in terms of when he first achieved the 20% dominator rating, which is how you get the breakout age metric. But not a huge, statistical standpoint season for Skyy Moore because of the shortened season overall. But coming into his redshirt sophomore season in 2021, in this season, he blew the fuck up, right? 135 targets, 94 catches, 1,283 yards, 36.68% target share, 10 receiving touchdowns on the season. As you guys can see on the screen right now, per grinding the mocks, Skyy Moore's expected draft position is 43.5. So he is expected to go in the top 50 overall picks of the NFL draft. NFL teams seem very high on this guy. I just listened to the First Draft podcast with Mel Kiper and Todd McShay. They couldn't wait to talk about this dude. Teams are very excited about him. Could go in the first round, but probably more so early in the second round. So let's start with the 6 fundamental traits for wide receivers. And if you guys are new around here, I determine these 6 fundamental traits based on the basics of playing wide receiver, what you should look for in your fantasy wide receivers when you're scouting them. And they're easy to evaluate, easy to cross-reference with metrics. So pretty much anybody can do it. You don't need to be a film savant and know all this technique and all that kind of stuff. So number 1, the first fundamental trait that we're looking for is how well a wide receiver can separate, how well they can run routes, their route running ability, basically. And Skyy Moore does this exceptionally well, especially on short routes. This is his bread and butter. His release is very well developed off the line of scrimmage for an FCS dude. You're going to see a number of clips of him beating corners off the line of scrimmage, and he can use his hands and his physicality very well in this area to beat DBs quick and use his athleticism to continue beating them, obviously, and get downfield and all that kind of stuff. His route tree was the only thing that I was worried about in this area because most of the routes that he was running was short slants and crossers and bubbles, and even on his intermediate routes, they're not extremely complicated. He was running routes that were typically just to get the ball in his hands because he was their best player, but I'll get more into that when I talk about usage. His separation metrics, though, are off the charts. If you guys look at his separation metrics, the single best target share, 39.5% target share for his team, 99th percentile. If you're going to play for a small school like Western Michigan, you better dominate the targets, which is why I wasn't in on a guy like Dwayne Eskridge last year, who was on Skyy Moore's team. 32.89% targets per route run, which ranks 4th in the class, 2nd in PFF receiving grade on the season, only behind Drake London at 91.6. 3.4 yards per route run, 6th in the class as well. So off the charts from a separation route running standpoint for Skyy Moore. Hands, the second fundamental trait that we're going to get into here. How are the wide receivers' hands? What we're evaluating is, can he make simple catches? Is he going to drop the ball all the time? Is he going to make catches outside of his frame, catches through heavy contact, contested catches? All that stuff goes into hands, body control, everything included in that. Two guys back-to-back with excellent hands. Jahan Dotson, who I talked about earlier this week, excellent hands, probably the best in the class. Skyy Moore has a similar ability, to be honest. I talked about with Dotson, for a 5'10" wide receiver, both of those guys are the same height. He has an innate ability to come down with pretty much anything. 50-50 balls, catches with a guy draped all over him, spectacular catches, everything in between. Skyy Moore's hands are a true asset to his game. Second in the class in on-target catch percentage. So basically just the percentage of throws deemed to be on target in Skyy Moore's vicinity, basically, that he came down with, 95.7%, was second in the class only to Jamison Williams, and he was best in the class in catchable target rate. So any target that was deemed to be catchable for, a wide receiver of NFL caliber talent, catchable target rate, 92.2%, best in the class. So this guy has very, very good hands. Moving on to the next ability, which is yards after catch ability. What can you do with the ball in your hands? Are you able to make the most of your targets? And with Skyy Moore, I'd say that his style of play is kind of bully ball, right? The best way to describe him, the most lofty comparison you will hear for this kid in the draft process is Mel Kiper's comparison for him, which is Steve Smith Sr. And I'm not going to compare him to a Hall of Fame caliber talent like Steve Smith, but he does have that bulldog ability with the ball in his hands. He's tough. He's physical. He's able to break tackles. He's able to make people miss. 5.7 yards after catch per reception, ranks about average in this class. But again, he was running a lot of short routes, so that is not something that you want to take away too much from it. The better number and the more predictive number is the fact that he leads the class in avoided tackle percentage after the catch. 27.66% of his catches, he avoided a tackle after he caught the ball. So this is a dude that can make things happen after the catch. Very, very encouraging to see. Moving on to his usage, and this is where the bulk of this video is going to be talking about, AKA where they win. We want wide receivers typically to be 3-level threats like Jamar Chase. They can win short, they can win intermediate, they can win deep. Where they win is very important. Is he going to be a downfield receiver? Is he going to be a slot receiver, design touches only? This is the issue that I saw with Skyy Moore. And can he work downfield? For sure. I think his yards per reception as a true freshman, 15.7, and his yards per reception as a sophomore, 15.5, kind of speaks to his ability to win at all three levels of the field a little bit. But his final season, his yards per reception dropped to 13.6, which is in the 34th percentile. He ran 34.5% of his routes from the slot as well. And many teams are likely going to pigeonhole him into a slot receiver at the next level. 60 of his 125 targets came under 9 yards downfield. So is Skyy Moore just the next Rondale Moore, just the next Laviska Shenault all over again? These guys that were heavily targeted in college, they were analytics darlings who won't translate to the NFL level because they were force-fed the ball in a bad offense in college. They don't necessarily have what it takes to become a true 3-level threat at the next level. I don't think that this is the case for Skyy Moore. I think his usage is concerning, and it's definitely something you don't want to see. You want to see your players be 3-level threats, but he is better. He has a better profile than those guys. Both of those guys that I mentioned, Rondale Moore and Laviska Shenault, were sub 25th percentile in terms of their yards per reception. Their average depth of target was nearly 2 yards and 3 yards lower than Skyy Moore's average depth of target. And Rondale Moore specifically, his usage was absolutely comical. His yards per reception was in the first percentile. They force-fed this dude into screens and drags all game long. Skyy Moore's biggest hurdle and concern is this usage aspect of this game, but it is not nearly to the degree of Rondale Moore's last year. It's not nearly to the degree of Laviska Shenault's a couple of years ago. Skyy Moore does have something to overcome at the next level. He needs to become a little bit more of a 3-level threat. He needs to be used down the field a little bit more than he was. His deep usage wasn't there. It's not something that I can point to and say, yep, this guy checks this box. 15.2% of his targets came down the field. So that ranks in terms of a percentage, one of the lowest in the class. I can't ignore that fact about Skyy Moore, but it does look like when he gets downfield, he's able to do it. So I'm willing to forgive it a little bit more than I was for a guy like Rondale Moore last year, but it is still a concern for him, a hurdle for him at the next level nonetheless. Number 5 is athleticism, their natural gifts. How good of an athlete are they? Size was a bit of a concern coming in for Skyy Moore. 5'9", 180 pounds was what he was listed at Western Michigan on their website and all that stuff. But 5'9.5", nearly 5'10", 195 pounds is huge for him because that basically clears the two hurdles that we're looking for. We don't want receivers under 5'9" tall, 5'9.5" clears that. We don't want receivers under 190 pounds, 195 pounds clears that. So that is very, very good. His jumps were solid. His explosiveness drills were solid. 4.41 speed in the 40-yard dash, 10-yard split, 9.95, 20-yard split, 9.8. So he was flying out there, especially for a guy that some people can, I've heard say he doesn't have great play speed, but obviously if he has a good 10-yard split, 20-yard split, and 40-yard dash, he must have very, very good speed. So the only issue for him is that his agilities weren't very good. And this is kind of what I talked about with Jahan Dotson as well, especially for a guy who was making people miss at the level he was making people miss at after the catch. It's really surprising to me that his agility drills weren't very good. 3.64, 4.35 out of 10, according to MathBomb. It's really puzzling why he tested poorly in this area, but I'm not very concerned about it. I saw it on tape. He's able to make people miss. He has good agilities. He's very twitchy in space. I'm not really concerned about his testing number in this area. Either way, though, however you slice it, his athletic ability is a positive to his profile. In general, it'd be ideal if he was 6'3" and 220 pounds, but he's not. Such is life. He's 5'9", 195 pounds. You can work with that. It's not a death nail for his profile. So speaking of his profile, the paper nerds, we always talk about their analytics profiles. He has got the analytics community by the balls. All my, the people that I follow that are big analytics guys, they love Skyy Moore. The paper nerds love him some Skyy Moore. The negatives on Skyy Moore from his analytics profile are his size, like I talked about, 5'9.5", 195 pounds, but he does reach the thresholds you're looking for. So it's not that concerning. And the other thing is that the school he attended, right? The competition he played against, not ideal. We'd love to see him do this in the SEC, on the same team as great, wide receiver prospects, but that's just not the reality of the situation. But when we look at his numbers, if you're going to go to a small school and play against subpar competition, you better dominate. And he absolutely dominated. 44.8% college dominator rating, 91st percentile, his absurd 39.5% college target share, 99th percentile. If you have a nearly 40% target share, you have to be the best player on your team. It is not a question mark, in my opinion. Solid breakout age as a true sophomore, 20.0, 62nd percentile there. Also was a productive freshman. When you look back at his freshman year, he just didn't quite clear the breakout age threshold. Good testing numbers. Like I said, expected high draft capital. Our buddy Jacob Sanderson from the Bulletproof Discord and a number of other places, Player Profiler and stuff, he tweeted this out. Skyy Moore is projected to be the first early declare, so 3-year player basically. Typically, we see these older wide receivers coming out of these small schools like Christian Watson this year, and we're a little bit wary of it because they're older, dominating lackluster competition. But Skyy Moore isn't one of those guys. He's coming out as a 21-year-old. He's coming out as a 3-year player in college. He's going to be the first early declare wide receiver from the group of 5 to be drafted in round 2 or higher since Devontae Adams in 2014. So that's very interesting, right? Because like I said, we typically see small school wide receivers come out and they're older prospects. They've come from smaller schools. They've been there for 5 years, like Christian Watson, like Cooper Kupp, like some of these dudes. And that's what we're looking at. And it's a big concern from an analytics standpoint. But Skyy Moore came out. He had the balls to come out as a redshirt sophomore from a small school. He must have known that he was going to be going high in the NFL draft. And in terms of weighted dominator rating over average, which is a big analytics term that people like to cling to, I actually charted Skyy Moore with a number of other guys that I've brought up already, Laviska Shenault, Rondale Moore, and Christian Kirk. In their draft eligible seasons, you see Skyy Moore's ability is above all of those guys. And with Rondale Moore and Laviska Shenault, they kind of tallied off towards the end of their college careers. So when you chart him among these guys, you can kind of see why Skyy Moore is turning a lot of heads in the analytics community. And when we get into subjective traits, anything that can't be quantified, for those of you guys that are new around here, that just means like their smarts, their toughness, their nuance to their game. With Skyy Moore, he does have some very good subjective traits. Like I said, he plays like a bulldog. He's physical. He's tough. He's got that in spades. So no concerns there. Release at the line of scrimmage is well developed and he's twitchy at the top of his routes, but he will need some coaching in terms of how to be more nuanced on his route running. Because like I said, this is a dude that played quarterback and defensive back in high school. He has not played wide receiver very long. His football IQ, his nuance, his feel for the position will need to be coached up at the next level. And that'll come with more experience as well. So when we get into final grades for Skyy Moore, how he ended up grading out for me, 900 out of 1,100. So a pretty even number for me. Or an early second round talent is how he graded out. His biggest strengths, like I said, being hands, yards after catch ability, his athleticism, his release at the line of scrimmage, and his profile. Biggest weaknesses are the fact that he's not very experienced at the position. He doesn't have a lot of nuance. His downfield versatility was lacking in college. His production downfield was lacking in college, and he had somewhat of a limited route tree that may pigeonhole some teams to look at him as just a slot receiver in their eyes. So those are his strengths. Those are his weaknesses. He's currently my wide receiver 6 in the rookie class this year in that second tier of wide receivers. My first tier of wide receivers, if you guys are new, is Drake London, Treylon Burks, and Garrett Wilson. My second tier of wide receivers is Jahan Dotson, who's my wide receiver 4, who I covered on Monday. Then Jameson Williams, who I did a tail of the tape about a couple of weeks ago. He's my wide receiver 5. Wide receiver 6 is Skyy Moore. Wide receiver 7 is Chris Olave. So those guys make up my second tier. I have not watched Christian Watson yet, but he might figure into that tier as well, followed by David Bell and George Pickens in the third tier wide receivers for me. So you can check all of my rookie rankings, running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, etc. on Patreon. The link is in the description for that. You'll get our Superflex rankings, one quarterback rankings, Dynasty rankings manifesto with all the veterans included, as well as bucketed rankings by age as well. So that you can check out on Patreon, but that is how he stacks up for me as far as his rank goes. In terms of comparable players, my comp for Skyy Moore is actually Christian Kirk. I've seen Golden Tate's name thrown out a million times. I know Danny compares him to Golden Tate. Mel Kiper comps him to Steve Smith, who I mentioned as well. And I've seen some sickos throw out Antonio Brown's name as well. Christian Kirk is my favorite comparison for him because their college careers are very similar. And what people thought about Christian Kirk coming out of Texas A&M are very similar to the thoughts I have about Skyy Moore coming out of Western Michigan. And he was an analytics darling coming out, Christian Kirk. Skyy Moore is an analytics darling. So it took some time. But if Christian Kirk's identical profile came out again, I'm going to make that bet again because it took Christian Kirk like 4 or 5 years to actually have a productive fantasy season. But like I said, his profile was very good coming out of college, and it's a profile that you should be willing to bet on coming out of college. So for that reason, I'm pretty in on Skyy Moore this year. Pro projection, his best fit is to be a slot receiver. If a team wanted to deploy him as their full-time slot receiver, that would be the best fit for him. But I do think he can play on the outside if they need him to, play as a Z flanker role, like how the Jets used Elijah Moore last year, would make a ton of sense. This team in Kansas City, they have this guy named Tyreek Hill that they recently traded. Maybe you guys have heard of him. Skyy Moore would be an absolutely perfect fit for Tyreek Hill's role. And I'm not talking about the role that Tyreek Hill had in previous years where he was the field stretcher and he was, beating defenses deep. I'm talking about the role that Tyreek Hill had this year where he was 140, 150 target guy, like unlike we've ever seen from Tyreek Hill. That role, if they wanted to replace it in the draft, Skyy Moore would be perfect if they use either 29 or 30 on Skyy Moore. He'd also fit very well in Indianapolis opposite Michael Pittman Jr. He'd fit very well in Buffalo to replace Cole Beasley in the slot. He'd fit very well in Cleveland in round 2 to replace Jarvis Landry. And he also, to be honest, just seems like he would be a good New England Patriot too, if they wanted to address their wide receiver position in the second round. His fantasy outlook, his fantasy upside, Skyy Moore is currently my 110 in Superflex leagues. That is currently where I have him ranked. That's a few spots higher right now than his keep trade cut value. So I am a decent bit higher on Skyy Moore. The keep trade cut has him at 205 in Superflex leagues. So this is a guy I'm very comfortable using my late first, early second rounder on, especially if he gets a half decent landing spot with good draft capital. On the First Draft podcast for ESPN, I listened to it yesterday, and Todd McShay said on the podcast that he expects Skyy Moore to hear his name very, very early called on day 2 of the NFL draft. So this is a dude that'll probably come off the board in the first 10 picks of round 2 if he doesn't go in the first round. That draft capital, that ability that I saw on film, that secures him as a late first round pick for me in rookie drafts. So if you guys did enjoy this video, as always, hit the like button, comment any of your thoughts down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Go check out our other Tail of the Tape videos if you want to learn about the other prospects. Maybe this is the first one that you're watching. You can see those videos as well on the channel. Again, check out the Patreon if you guys want access to our rookie rankings, Superflex, one quarterback, dynasty quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end rankings among veterans. We also have rookies included in those as well. Bucketed rankings by age, rookies included in there as well. That is available on the Patreon. Link is in the description for that. You'll also get first priority to Dynasty Decisions episodes. You'll also get all of our player cards and grades and our databases that are made up in Patreon as well. So peace out, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.